Some women don't try to be remembered. They simply are. Not because they speak the loudest, not because they demand attention, but because they move through the world like a quiet song that lingers, long after the music has stopped. He doesn't know why he keeps thinking of her. Her name crosses his mind when the room falls silent, when the night grows long and the noise fades. It's not her body he remembers. It's her energy, the calm within her voice, the way she never fought to be seen, the way she seemed already full, as though nothing he could offer would complete her. This is where it begins. The magnetism of absence. For Jung, the soul's attraction is never truly toward another person. It is toward the unintegrated parts of oneself. When a man feels pulled toward a woman, he is often feeling the echo of his own anima, the inner feminine he has long silenced or neglected. She becomes the mirror. And it's not her presence that binds him, it's her distance. Because distance awakens longing, and longing is the bridge between ego and soul. He begins to dream of her. In the half-light between sleep and waking, she appears, not as she was, but as some mythic embodiment of what he's missing within himself. She's soft where he's been hardened, intuitive where he's been logical, open where he's been closed. Her silence becomes sacred to him, because in her silence, he hears his own emptiness. The woman who understands this does not chase. She knows that pursuit breaks the spell. The more she runs toward him, the more he identifies her with the world of ego, a world he already dominates and controls. But when she withdraws, when she stops proving, pleading, performing, she shifts from ego object to symbol. She becomes mythic, and the male psyche cannot forget a symbol. In this way, her detachment is not cruelty. It is alchemy. Her absence stirs the unconscious. It invites projection, imagination, obsession, not because she manipulates him, but because she embodies what he unconsciously seeks, the lost feminine within his own soul. The ancient poets knew this truth before Jung ever named it. The beloved who retreats becomes divine. Her absence creates devotion. She is the empty space that calls him inward, the void that forces him to feel. But what she must understand, what every woman of quiet power must remember, is that her stillness is not a tactic. It is not a strategy to make him think of her. It is the natural state of a woman who no longer betrays herself for the illusion of connection. She has faced her own shadow. She has sat in the loneliness most cannot bear. She has learned that her worth is not amplified by another's attention, nor diminished by another's neglect. And in that radical acceptance, she becomes luminous. There's a particular look in such a woman's eyes. It's not seduction, nor defiance, but something older, something timeless, a calm born from having died to the need for validation. She no longer needs to chase because she already knows. If he must be chased, he cannot meet her soul. This is the paradox. The more she lets go, the closer he comes. The more she surrenders to her own center, the more gravity she holds. It's the same mystery the moon holds over the tide. A pull without touch, a command without sound. And somewhere in his chest, a restlessness begins to stir. He doesn't name it longing yet. He only knows that something feels missing, and the missing thing has her face. He checks her messages. He scrolls, hoping for her name to appear. He remembers her laughter, not the loud one she gave the world, but the quiet one that escaped when she wasn't trying. He thinks of the moment she turned away, not in anger, but in that soft, inevitable way that felt like destiny unfolding. Her absence unsettles him, not because she played a game, but because she broke a pattern. For the first time, the hunter was left alone with his hunger. In Jungian terms, this is the initiation of the masculine psyche. When the outer feminine withdraws, the inner feminine demands recognition. He begins to see what she once mirrored: his own avoidance, his own fear of depth, his addiction to pursuit without intimacy. And while he wrestles with his ghosts, she continues her silent blooming. She does not wait. She does not wonder. She simply returns to her art, her solitude, her stillness, to the forgotten language of her own body and soul. This is what the unchaste woman understands. to make him think of you all day. You must first stop thinking of him, not from bitterness, but from fullness, because what fills itself cannot crave, and what does not crave cannot be forgotten. When he finally sees her again, even if only in his mind, she appears changed, not because she has reinvented herself, but because she is no longer orbiting him. Her energy now moves in a self-contained spiral, a field of mystery that no hand can possess. It draws him in, not through words, but through silence, not through presence, but through the echo of what was never truly his. She has become what Jung called the self in bloom, the union of shadow and light, of innocence and knowing, and to the man who once thought he understood her, she is now unknowable. He feels her everywhere, in the music, in the quiet hours before dawn, in the scent of rain. She lives in his unconscious now, woven into his dreams, a reminder of what it means to feel alive. Desire does not begin in the body, it begins in the imagination, the unseen landscape where the soul remembers what it has forgotten. And when the woman withdraws, when she stops offering every piece of herself in pursuit of love, she awakens in the man a hunger that words cannot soothe. He feels it first as confusion. How could absence feel so alive? How could silence sound louder than speech? He tries to distract himself. Another conversation, another face, another touch. But every gesture feels hollow. Every substitute fades quickly into dust. The image of her stillness lingers, haunting him like an unfinished sentence. It is not that she bewitched him. It is that he projected onto her the lost image of his own wholeness. Jung called this the anima projection, the way a man unconsciously seeks the feminine soul he has exiled from his own nature. And when she leaves, he feels that exile return. For so long, he was drawn to her warmth, but he could not understand it. It wasn't her beauty that held him. It was her depth, that subtle knowing behind her eyes, as if she carried the memory of something he could not name. When she spoke, it wasn't the words he wanted. It was the presence beneath them, a kind of serenity that disarmed him. He didn't realize then that he wasn't chasing her love. He was chasing his own lost reflection, because every time she looked at him without fear, he caught a glimpse of the man he could be, strong, yet tender, powerful, yet vulnerable. But the moment he grew afraid of that depth, he pulled away, and she felt it, the subtle withdrawal, the unspoken tension. So she did what the awakened woman always does. She stepped back, not in resentment, but in reverence for her own worth. And that is when the mirror turned. Now he sees himself in her absence, the way he hides behind detachment, the way he mistakes control for love, and passion for power. Her absence has become a mirror so clear that he can no longer deny what he sees. Meanwhile, the woman moves through her own metamorphosis. She doesn't rush the ache away. She lets the longing dissolve her illusions. She sits with the ache like a priestess tending sacred fire, knowing that every ember of desire, if not suppressed, can become light. In her solitude, she remembers who she was before the chase, before the need to be chosen, before the echo of patriarchal longing told her she was incomplete alone. She begins to dance again, not for an audience, not for approval, but because her body remembers rhythm without instruction. Every movement becomes prayer, every breath, a return. This is her first subtle way, not a trick, not a tactic, but a shift in being. When she no longer performs for his gaze, she becomes magnetic in her natural state. He feels it in the air around her name. He senses it in the way her absence hums with life, as though she is too busy blooming to notice who is watching. And something ancient within him stirs. He begins to wonder, what is she thinking about? Who has replaced me in her imagination? Does she ever think of me the way I think of her? He cannot help himself. The more he wonders, the more he feels. The more he feels, the more he dreams. And every dream leads him back, not to her body, but to her energy, that sacred, ungraspable essence that made him feel both lost and found. Men have written poems about such women for centuries, not the ones who chase, but the ones who withdraw with grace. Because in their absence, the world bends differently. Time slows. Colors deepen. The heart begins to ache in the sweetest way. It is not cruelty that makes her unforgettable. It is containment. She holds her energy close, like a chalice of sacred wine, not to withhold, but to preserve its holiness. Because she knows what happens when a woman gives without boundaries. Her energy scatters, her essence dilutes, and she becomes invisible. But when she gathers herself, when she stops explaining, pleading, performing, she becomes mysterious again. And mystery is the language of desire. For Jung, the mysterious woman is not a game. She is an archetype, the anima in her full expression, inviting the masculine psyche toward integration through wonder. Her mystery says, "There is something within me you cannot possess, only meet." And that unpossessable essence is what calls him deeper. Every time he tries to forget her, the psyche rebels, because what he truly wants is not her phone number, not her attention, but the part of himself that only awakens in her presence. Her silence becomes his teacher. Her absence becomes his initiation. And as the moon waxes and wanes, she feels her power grow quieter, steadier. She does not seek revenge, for she knows that revenge belongs to the realm of the unhealed. She does not wait either, for waiting belongs to the realm of dependency. She simply lives, and living fully becomes her most subtle spell. He sees her at a distance, perhaps in memory, perhaps in reality, laughing with others, eyes alight, completely unconcerned with his observation. And something inside him cracks open, because he realizes that her joy no longer revolves around him. And yet, that realization binds him closer than ever. This is the paradox of archetypal attraction. When she was chasing him, he felt in control. But now that she is free, he feels consumed. He wonders what changed. He doesn't know that it was not a change in action, but a change in vibration. She no longer reaches outward. Her energy moves inward, spiraling through the unseen corridors of her psyche, healing, integrating, reclaiming. And that inward spiral radiates outward like fragrance, invisible, yet impossible to ignore. Even the air seems to remember her. The world holds her image like a secret, because she now moves with the grace of a woman who belongs to herself. He begins to dream again. But this time, she is not running toward him. She stands at a lake's edge, moonlight touching her skin like prayer. He calls her name, but she only smiles. A soft, knowing smile that tells him, "You must find me within yourself now." When he wakes, his heart aches with a beauty he cannot define. He feels her everywhere, but cannot reach her anywhere. And in that ache, the transformation begins. Desire without possession becomes devotion. Longing without control becomes reverence. And for the first time, he begins to sense what real connection means. Not dominance, not pursuit, but presence. Meanwhile, she walks through her days untouched by the urgency that once consumed her. Her silence is not emptiness. It is containment, a sacred boundary that keeps her soul intact. When she speaks now, her words carry weight. When she laughs, it feels like grace. When she enters a room, she doesn't demand attention. The atmosphere simply shifts to accommodate her presence. This is the second subtle way. Not a technique, but an essence. She becomes unforgettable not by trying to be remembered, but by returning to her natural radiance. And in that radiance, the masculine mind finds no rest. He is haunted not by what she said, but by what she did not say. He replays her stillness, her gaze, her last silence, trying to decode a mystery that was never meant to be solved, only felt. The woman who learns this art no longer plays by the rules of attachment. She does not seek to be chosen, she chooses herself. And in doing so, she awakens in him the ancient longing of the soul, to merge not with a person, but with truth. She has become truth, unreachable but undeniable, soft, yet unyielding, distant, yet deeply near. He will think of her all day, not because she demands to be remembered, but because she has become part of his unconscious, woven into his myth, etched into the landscape of his becoming. Silence, when it belongs to a woman who knows herself, is not absence, it is gravity. It draws everything toward her, not by force but by resonance. Men have written stories about such women, not understanding that what they call mystery is simply the vibration of wholeness. He feels her even when she isn't there. It starts as a flicker, a passing thought in the middle of the day, an ache beneath the ribs at night. No message, no glance, no sound, just a soft pulse of memory that refuses to fade. What makes him think of her all day is not what she gives, but what she holds back. Her restraint is sacred, because she no longer speaks to be heard, touches to be chosen, or waits to be seen. She has entered the realm of feminine containment, the quiet mastery of energy that cannot be measured by words. The feminine, when conscious, does not chase. She calls, not with her voice, but with her field, an invisible invitation that speaks directly to the masculine soul. And the man who once took her for granted now feels her everywhere, in the silence between his thoughts, in the stillness before dawn, in the laughter that doesn't quite reach his eyes. He begins to sense her presence not as memory, but as mirror, because in truth, she never leaves. She only withdraws the projection. And when she does, he is forced to see what was always there. His own emptiness, his own yearning, his own unlived tenderness. Jung wrote that the feminine is the gateway to the unconscious. When a man falls for a woman of depth, he falls, not into her but into himself. And yet he resists it, because to surrender to her silence means to face the very parts of him he's spent a lifetime escaping. Still, he cannot stop thinking of her. He senses that her detachment is not rejection, but revelation. She has become the threshold he cannot cross, until he becomes whole. And while he wrestles with his awakening, she continues to unfold inwardly, her silence ripening into wisdom. She no longer mistakes reaction for connection. She no longer seeks closure from the ones who wounded her. She knows that the true closure comes when she no longer needs to explain the pain. Her healing happens in quiet places, in long walks, in music that speaks her name in another language, in the still water where her reflection no longer looks back in fear. This is the third subtle way, to allow silence to speak louder than need. It is not manipulation. It is alignment. Because when she stops chasing the echo begins to chase her. He feels it, the growing distance between her and the woman he remembers. Once, she was predictable. Now she is vast. He cannot read her anymore. And that unknowability awakens his attention. He replays every memory, searching for the place where she slipped beyond his grasp. But what he doesn't understand is that she was never something to be held. She was always something to be met, a soul, not a possession. And the more he reaches mentally, the more she eludes him spiritually, because the woman who no longer needs to prove her worth radiates an energy that bends reality itself. Even time begins to orbit her differently. He feels it when he thinks of her, that subtle expansion of space, as if her name is a doorway to something infinite. There is an image that returns to him often. Her face lit by candlelight, eyes half in shadow, a look that says more than any words could. He remembers how she paused before answering. Those few seconds of sacred stillness that made him lean closer. It is that pause he now misses most, because in it, she held the entire power of choice. The pause was her sovereignty. It said, "I do not rush to fill the silence. I let the truth come to me." And that simple act, that refusal to chase clarity, made her unforgettable. Every time she withdrew her energy, she taught him the language of presence. Every time she chose stillness over reaction, she mirrored his own chaos back to him. And every time she walked away with grace, she showed him the cost of taking the sacred for granted. He doesn't know this yet, but she is guiding him through initiation. The modern psyche calls it heartbreak. Jung would call it individuation, because through her absence, he begins to encounter his shadow, his fear of intimacy, his obsession with control, his inability to rest in uncertainty. And through her stillness, she too meets her own reflection, the part of her that once confused love with approval, the part that thought being chosen meant being worthy. She lets those illusions burn in the fire of awareness, And from the ashes, a quieter love is born. One that asks for nothing, yet transforms everything it touches. Now, her energy feels different. When she walks, the air seems to follow her rhythm. When she speaks, people listen without knowing why. When she looks at someone, they feel seen, not for what they pretend to be, but for what they are. Because she has seen herself fully, and that recognition radiates outward like a pulse of light. This is the fourth subtle way, to let your own healing become your allure. Because what captivates him now is not her body, but her evolution. She has become the embodiment of something he secretly yearns for, peace within chaos. And so, he circles her in thought. He wonders if she ever thinks of him. He writes messages he never sends. He looks for her face in strangers, for her energy in other hearts. But no one compares, because no one else carries that strange blend of softness and sovereignty. He begins to realize that the woman he once knew is gone, and in her place stands something rarer, a woman who belongs to herself. This realization humbles him. It softens him. He begins to listen, not to her words, but to the silence she left behind. In that silence, he hears his own longing echo back, not for her alone, but for something deeper. Meaning, connection, presence. And the more he listens, the more he feels her, as if she lives within the architecture of his heart, a compass pointing toward something sacred. She is no longer trying to make him think of her. She has simply become unforgettable, because she represents the one thing the world keeps losing: depth. This is how she pulls him without touching him, how she calls him without speaking, how she enters his dreams without permission. Not through strategy, but through essence. Not through seduction, but through stillness. He cannot explain it, but every thought of her leads him back to himself. And in that return, something ancient stirs, the masculine awakening to the feminine truth, that love cannot be owned, only mirrored. There comes a moment in every man's psyche, a pause he cannot name, where her absence starts to echo louder than her presence ever did. He sits in silence, scrolling through the noise of his world, but nothing holds him. Her name does not appear, her voice does not call, yet her energy hums beneath everything. It is here, in this sacred absence, that the true alchemy begins. The woman who once reached for him has become an archetype he cannot escape. She is no longer a person. She is a reflection of what he has yet to become. And that reflection burns. When she detached, she did not punish him. She purified herself. When she went quiet, she did not vanish. She deepened. And now, everything he does, every woman he meets, every fleeting conversation, feels like a mirror trying to capture her essence. But it doesn't. It can't. Because she was never just a woman. She was his anima, the feminine soul within him that he refused to meet. And when she walked away, he was left with the hollow ache of that refusal. The ache that no distraction can soothe. She, on the other hand, moves differently now. Her days are filled not with waiting, but with awakening. She no longer needs to be remembered by him, because she remembers herself. The woman who reclaims her projection, who stops seeing her worth through his eyes, becomes untouchable, not cold, not cruel, but radiant in her sovereignty. Her presence once activated his desire. Her absence now activates his introspection. He starts to wonder why he can't forget her. Why every song, every scent, every quiet morning feels like she's still there. But it's not her he misses. It's what she awoke in him. It's the feeling of being seen by someone who could see beyond the surface. And yet, when she was there, he didn't know how to hold it. He couldn't meet the depth because he hadn't met his own. This is the paradox of attraction. It mirrors the state of one's inner world. You can only desire at the level of your own consciousness. And she was light years ahead. Sometimes, the most magnetic thing a woman can do is disappear into her becoming. Not to manipulate, not to make him chase, but to honor the sacred silence between her old self and the one being born through it. For him, this silence is haunting. For her, it is holy. He feels her energy even when she is gone because she once stood as the mirror to his soul. And now, every empty space whispers her name. But she doesn't need him to return. She doesn't need his apology. Because something in her shifted. Permanently. She has stepped beyond the cycle of projection and pursuit. The woman who once longed to be understood now simply understands herself. And that is the deepest kind of power. You see, he will think about her all day not because she performed some clever trick, not because she played games or mastered tactics, but because she became the embodiment of something his soul cannot forget. A woman who sees without clinging, who feels without demanding, who loves without losing herself. And when a man meets such a woman, his psyche is changed forever. Even if he walks away, even if he forgets her name, her energy remains like a fragrance on his soul. The memory of what true feminine presence feels like. Soft yet powerful. Open yet sovereign. Loving yet free. He may not understand it in words, but every part of him knows. He met something divine. And no matter how much time passes, that energy calls him back to himself. She doesn't chase. She doesn't beg. She simply exists in quiet radiance, and life moves around her like a tide drawn to the moon. That is her magic, the subtle gravity of a woman who belongs fully to herself. And so, the final truth unfolds like a whisper across eternity. He will think about her all day because she has become a symbol of what he has yet to integrate. She is no longer a woman in his world. She is the world within him he has not yet dared to explore. And as for her, she has already crossed the threshold, into her fullness, into her light, into her sacred, unbothered power.